We're on the second video of our series called Understanding Today's World Order. In the last video, I wrapped up the Cold War with the peace treaty I signed with Germany on September 12, 1990. Treaty on the final settlement with respect to Germany. The agreement, signed between the countries that won World War II, the Soviet Union, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, and West Germany and East Germany, paved the way for a unified Germany that would incorporate East Germany into West Germany. 45 years later, the victors of the war returned all their rights over the territories of East and West Germany and the city of Berlin, which was under legal occupation, to Germany. The fact that this agreement was signed in Moscow, the capital of the Soviet Union, which played the largest role in winning the war, will be the last gesture made to that country. With this agreement, Germany has officially given up all its former territories to the east of the Oder-Neisse line: East Pomerania, West Prussia, East Prussia, and Silesia. It had previously agreed to this with East Germany and West Germany in separate deals with the relevant states. Because of the agreement, the German army can only have 370,000 soldiers and can only have conventional weapons. Germany may never have nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons on its own. Also, the agreement said that no foreign military forces or nuclear warheads could be based in the former East Germany, including Berlin. Some people say that this was part of a secret deal between the Soviet Union and the United States that NATO wouldn't expand into Eastern Europe. Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, said on several occasions that the United States had made it clear that NATO would not move eastward beyond the borders of a unified Germany. It's clear that this commitment, which the Soviet Union received in exchange for allowing Germany's reunification, ceased to exist with the rapid dissolution of the country in 1991 and the subsequent Russian Federation's struggle with various political and economic problems in the 1990s. The same old rules of diplomatic history apply here too. Deals that are based on the real balance of power don't count anymore if that balance changes, unless they're signed legally and explicitly. The peace agreement with Germany clearly says that NATO can't do certain things, like have exercises or use nuclear weapons in the former East German states, but they kept on doing it anyway. Germany used the economic and political power it had gradually built up after 1945 to repair the immense damage it had suffered. 45 years later, when Germany entered the war, it had achieved some of the goals it had set for itself. Germany had become the clear economic powerhouse in Central and Eastern Europe, even if it wasn't a military power. It's mind-boggling to think about what kind of power Germany would have today if it hadn't produced leaders like Wilhelm II and Hitler, and if it hadn't gone to both world wars. The rise of Germany and the fall of the Soviet Union are a big difference between 1945 and 1990. As soon as the Cold War ended, the process of getting rid of political structures that were seen as balancing forces at the time, but no longer had a place in the global world, began. The Iraqi regime, which is based on Arab nationalism and a one-man rule in the Middle East, would be the first to fall. The 1990 Gulf War would go down in history as a successful military operation in which all the lessons learned by the US after the Vietnam War were applied, and the scale of US military power would be broadcast live on all TV channels, like a movie. This military operation also marks the beginning of the reopening of an old account. The way the Middle East is divided up, based on the 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement and solidified after 1918, is an outdated structure, even though it was partially revised in 1948 and 1967. Back in the early 1990s, the Arab world was a far cry from the new global order's principles. Its old-fashioned and authoritarian governments couldn't bring together societies with all sorts of different religions, languages, sects, and nationalities around a shared ideal, and they sure as heck couldn't distribute oil revenues fairly and justly. As soon as the Soviet Union started falling apart, the Western world, with the US in the lead, started playing a bigger role in the Middle East. The process that started with Iraq in 1990 would keep going with the 2003 Iraq War, accelerate suddenly with the 2010 Arab Spring after al-Qaeda and Ba'ath resistance in Iraq were defeated, and reach its peak with the Syrian War. The US and the rest of the Western world are really not interested in bringing democracy to the region, They just want to make sure that the amazing economic growth we've seen since the post-Cold War communications revolution, globalization, and neoliberal economic policies doesn't get messed up by an oil or energy shock. The big lesson we learned from the wild 1970s following the 1973 oil shock has been put into practice ever since the 1990s. The end of the Cold War also revealed another ironic truth that no one ever wrote about. US military bases haven't decreased, they've been upgraded and are more supportive of US strategic objectives. It's no accident that the largest US military bases outside the US are in Germany and Japan. The base on Okinawa Island in particular has been there for a long time, even though it's sometimes a source of tension between the US and Japan due to incidents involving US soldiers. It's interesting to note that the largest US military bases, after those in defeated countries during World War II, are Diego Garcia, leased by the UK, and Incirjillik Air Base. While shaping the Middle East, the US will also set up new military bases in countries like Iraq, Qatar, and Kuwait, and strengthen the structure of its existing military bases. After the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Britain, which had become the world's sole superpower, set up naval bases, telegraph stations, and coal centers in many important regions for specific purposes. The US has done the same thing since 1990. The United Kingdom's huge accumulation of capital, which it achieved by leading the Industrial Revolution and spreading credit and investment opportunities through its already solid banking system, along with its soft power and its readiness to step in militarily when it saw problems, would be the foundation of the United States' strategy as the sole superpower in the 1990s. A lot's changed in the New World, but some things never change. Even after the Cold War ended, the 5 big powers that make up the United Nations Security Council and can veto UN resolutions are still there. The Soviet Union's seat is going to be transferred to the Russian Federation. For some reason, the new conditions of the global world won't change the structure of the United Nations. So, in response to this situation, a G4 group made up of Germany, Japan, India, and Brazil is going to be formed. These countries will support each other's permanent Security Council memberships. Germany has gotten official support from France and the UK for permanent membership, but it hasn't secured the support of its close ally, the US, yet. The US and the UK are supporting Japan's application for permanent membership, but China has said it will veto it. So it looks like the UN will keep its basic structure, even if things change.
One of the most important developments of the globalization era is how the European Economic Community, or EEC, has gradually transformed into a political and economic community. The Maastricht Treaty, 1992, is a big deal. It's the agreement that sets up the basic economic rules for how Europe's economies will work together. The next step is the European Union switching to a single currency, the euro, in 1999. The Copenhagen criteria, which were set up in 1993, will lay out the political requirements for new countries to join the European Union. These political standards actually define the working principles of a contemporary and modern state: democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and minority rights. After the Cold War ended, Germany joined West Germany, and the same thing will happen with Eastern European countries that were part of the Soviet bloc. To join the EU, these countries will have to meet the economic and political standards set by the EU. The 1990s will bring about developments that will also challenge troubled countries. The death knell for Yugoslavia, which was set up with the addition of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slovenia, and Croatia, which the victors of World War I had offered to the Kingdom of Serbia as a morsel it could not swallow, will be sounded exactly 74 years later. Germany, along with Britain and France, is planning to speed up the dissolution by recognizing Slovenia and Croatia, which want to secede from Yugoslavia. Unfortunately, this could lead to a civil war. It looks like the process of breaking up Yugoslavia will keep going until 2008. History shows that federal states can only be sustainable if they have strong economic, political, and military foundations. It's important to remember that the US and Germany are the 2 rare examples in human history that have managed to maintain their integrity. On top of beefing up its military and political clout in the 90s, the US also surged ahead in the economic game. Greenspan was in charge when the U.S. economy grew quickly in the 1990s, and the big changes made by American business people in the communications field increased productivity a lot. The economy grew at an average rate of 3.6% in the 1990s, rising from 5.5 trillion USD in 1990 to 9.8 trillion USD in 2000. This huge growth rate for a big, mature economy, along with low inflation, rising productivity, and the creation of 2.4 million new jobs per year, made an economic miracle happen. Two big factors that would cause problems for the U.S. were slowly developing in the 1990s. The first was the economic risks made worse by the lack of oversight caused by the neoliberal policies put in place since the 1980s. These economic risks just kept getting bigger, and they ended up being the main reason for the global economic crisis in 2008. The second big risk forming beneath the surface was the transformation, like a virus, of the anti-communist Islamist organizations created to encircle and undermine the Soviet Union since the late 1970s. These Islamist organizations became a big deal in Pakistan and Afghanistan in the 1990s. They got some serious combat experience in their fight against the Soviet Union and became pros at modern guerrilla warfare thanks to the training and gear they got from American experts. But American strategists missed something. These organizations hated the Western system as much as they hated the Soviet system. They saw the Western system as an infidel and imperialist system. By the late 1990s, terrorist groups like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda had become more sophisticated. The economic crisis in Japan that began in 1989 and led to disaster in 1991 caused the country to lose the entire 1990s. The economy did a little bit better at the start of the 2000s, but then it went into a new recession, and then we got hit by the 2008 global economic crisis. One of the big reasons for South Korea and China's rise over the past 25 years compared to Japan is this economic disaster, which is still felt today. The banks were hit hard by asset prices that were way too high, a lax banking system, and a credit policy based on relationships. The Japanese example showed that in the modern financial system, a company can indeed fail even if it's too big to fail. Some of the same mistakes that led to the Japanese economic crisis were overlooked by the Western world, and they ended up being a major factor in the global economic crisis in 2008. In the second half of the 1990s, economic literature got a lot richer thanks to the economic crises that popped up in some developing countries: Mexico in 1995, East Asia in 1997, Russia in 1998, and Argentina and Turkey in 1999. As the 1990s were ending, the Western world, with the US in the lead, had experienced another economic miracle like the one after World War II, and had become much more powerful politically and militarily. On the morning of September 11, 2001, US time, the world would realize that the golden 1990s were over. Back in the 90s, we were pretty sure Saddam Hussein had a nuclear arsenal. His factories could barely make soap. Fareed Zakaria.